Hello and welcome to the Following Truth Bible Study. I'm your host, LJ, as usual. In this video, we're going to be looking at some claims that are made against the KJV. Some incorrect claims, I believe, that are made against the KJV Bible. This is actually the first video that I'm going to be making. It's going to be part of a series, a video series that I want to do, looking into things like textual criticism. I want to look at some of the specific verses and the different variants that we have. Some verses that are missing from some Bibles and are included in others. So I want to look at that. I'm also going to be looking at the origination of the Septuagint, or the LXX, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Scriptures. Also, some of the textual criticism and what are the claims that it actually makes. So basically, I'm going to be, I want to state my position, which I am not KJV only. That is a position that I probably used to say that I was before I really studied the subject too much in great detail. I only use the KJV in the English language. So my preference is the KJV, and I believe that the KJV Bible is the correct, has all the correct readings within it. But I am not KJV only, because that would... KJV onlyists only use the KJV. They don't really go to the Greek or the original, the Hebrew, or in order to investigate or support the claim of why the KJV is correct. So although some do, but so my position is that I only use the KJV in English, but I wouldn't be considered KJV only, because I do use the Hebrew and I use the Greek. Normally, I go to the Greek and Hebrew in order to support the readings that are found in the KJV. So I'm not here in any way to tell anybody that they should be KJV only, or that they should only use the KJV. That's not what this video or the series that I'm going to create is about. I have no interest in telling somebody that what Bible they should use. My intentions here are to, especially in this video, are to address some of the incorrect claims that are made against people that only use the KJV, or assert that the text that underlies the KJV, that they're wrong, and some of the claims that are made against us. So really, that's what I want to do. I want to address those. So if somebody is going to reject the KJV, or say that the KJV is a translation that shouldn't be used anymore because we have modern versions, NIV, ESV, NASB. We have hundreds of translations now. At least what I would like to do is to address some of those claims and correct some of those claims. So if you're going to reject the KJV or assert the other Bibles, at least do it with a little bit of truth, and a lot of these accusations against the KJV Bible itself are unfounded and incorrect. So yeah, in this video, I'm not going to be addressing any specific variant in this one. So it's really just addressing some of the claims. Now, for those that know of Josiah. He made a video that basically attacked the KJV, and in that video he made quite a few claims. Now, this isn't a video specifically against him. These claims are made by many people. I just Josiah's been somebody that I've interacted with recently and had discussions with. So I wanted to just say, I think Carlos has made a lot of these claims to me. I don't know whether he's actually made any specific videos or anything, but yeah. But these are general. These are accusations against the KJV that I kind of defend on a daily basis. So like I say, I'm not doing this in any way to try and push somebody to use the KJV or to be KJV only, or even Textus Receptus only, or Byzantine text or majority text, whichever. There's different texts that underlie different variations. So yeah, the Textus Receptus, the TR only people are slightly different than KJV only, so there are different variations within the text that underlies the KJV, or the text that has fundamentally been part of the TR and the majority text. Okay, so I'm going to just address some of those, and then hopefully if anybody would like to come on and discuss my position. Like I say, I don't really want to get involved too much in the way of specific verses in this video. I am going to be doing verses and readings in the future. So yeah, if anybody wants to come on afterwards and discuss it, I'm more than obviously happy as usual. Okay, so it is often claimed that King James authorized the King James Bible as a direct response to the use of the Geneva Bible by the Puritans. The Geneva Bible was the preferred Bible of the Anglicans and Puritans, but it contained extensive notes in the margins, many of which King James didn't like. And as some of the notes taught disobedience to authority, he decided to get rid of them. So he is quoted as saying, "I think that of all English Bibles, that the Geneva is the worst." And about the notes, he is quoted as saying they were very partial, untrue, seditious, and savoring too much of dangerous, traitorous conceits. So after he became King of England, he decided to create a new translation, the KJV, where he would remove the notes, and the translation would read more favorably towards the authority of the crown. In other words, his authority. Now, like I said, these claims are pretty widespread. You can even find these claims on Britannica.com. So it's pretty widespread. It's a generic argument. You don't have to search far and wide for these arguments. Now they have been personally used against me and my position. These claims in reality are either false or they're totally misrepresented in a way that makes it seem like they support an argument against the KJV. So here I'm going to just show where those claims err. So in 1603, King James VI of Scotland succeeded to the English throne after the death of Queen Elizabeth I and became King James I of England. As King of England, James would become the head of the Anglican Church. However, King James would inherit a divided church, split between two disagreeing factions. The godly, as they were called, they called themselves, and they were known by at the time. We know them better today as the Puritans and the Traditionalists. After the Reformation had started and England had split from the Catholic Church, England had become a Protestant country. Although during her reign as Queen, Mary I, or Bloody Mary as she's better known, desired to bring England back under the reign of Rome. She ordered the burning of all English Bibles and also those that were reading them, including John Rogers, who had translated the Matthew's Bible under the pseudonym Thomas Matthews. Now, the godly, the Puritans, pushed for continued reform, while the Traditionalists believed that the reform had gone far enough. Immediately on his succession, the Puritans petitioned King James regarding the need for greater reform, specifically in the areas of rituals, government of the church, and preaching. So it was on 3 points. That the doctrine of the church might be preserved in purity according to God's word. That God's pastors might be planted in all churches to preach the same. That the church government might be sincerely ministered according to God's word. And also the Book of Common Prayer might be fitted to more increase of piety. And that is, you can find that those 4, sorry, I said 3, but it's 4 points. And you can find those in the sum and substance of the conference on page 23. Now, this is quite an important book when it comes to this subject and this information. Now, King James called a conference at Hampton Court Palace in order to discuss complaints about the church and to resolve the issues of the Puritans. It was attended by the Puritans, councillors, bishops, and other senior clergymen, and also lawyers. Some of the attendees included, although the number and the attendees is recorded to have differed on different days of this conference, but there were literally lots of people, and I can name William Barlow, John Reynolds, Thomas Spark, John Newstub. They were all part of this. Roger Wilbraham. So there were a lot of people at this conference. Now, we have approximately 11 recorded accounts of the conference itself, and these accounts vary in length and detail. The longest and most detailed account comes to us by William Barlow, who attended the conference, in his semi-official sum and substance of the conference. And so that's the of the conference of the Hampton Court Conference. Now, the conference was set over 3 non-consecutive days. Now, they met on the 14th, the 16th, and the 18th of January, 1604. Some of the topics of discussion at the conference were church doctrine, liturgy, discipline, and pastoral provisions. At the conference, the Puritans were represented by 4 spokesmen. Now, these men were Lawrence Chatterton, Master of Emmanuel College in Cambridge, John Newstub, Rector of Cockfield, Suffolk, Thomas Spark, who was at Bletchley in Buckinghamshire, and the main spokesman for the Puritans was John Reynolds, president of Corpus Christi College in Oxford. James was himself a Protestant, King James. Furthermore, at this time, Scotland had already rejected many of the literature practices that were still being practiced in England. James, however, mostly sided with the traditionalists. He is recorded as stated, "No bishop, no king," and that's on page 36 of that book. The requests for reform put forward by Reynolds were rejected one by one. However, and quite the contrary to the claim regarding King James's desire for a new translation, at the last minute, it was Reynolds himself that made a petition to the conference that there be a need for a new translation of the Bible. Now, while this request had not been one of the original points of discussion, it did happen to be the only point that Reynolds was successful on in putting forth. And I'll read again from the book. "To the former, Dr. Reynolds did add the profanation of the Sabbath day and contempt of His Majesty's proclamation, made for the reforming of that abuse, of which he earnestly desired a straighter course for reformation, therefore. And unto this he found a general and unanimous assent. After that, he moved His Majesty that there might be a new translation of the Bible, because those which were allowed in the reign of King Henry VIII and Edward VI were corrupt, and not answerable to the truth of the original. For example, 1 Galatians 4:25, the Greek word is, which Greek word there is not well translated, as now it is bordereth, neither expressing the force of the word, nor the apostle's sense, nor the situation of the place. So King James is recorded as having thought that the Geneva was the worst of the English translations, as we've already seen, professing that he could never yet see a Bible well translated in English, but the worst of all His Majesty thought the Geneva to be, and that's on page 47. While it is true that King James did think that the Geneva Bible was the worst of the English translations, it is evident that he also did not think that any translation of the Bible into English at the time was well translated. We must also note that unlike today, where we have hundreds of English translations, at the time of King James, there were in reality less than 10, and only 2 were in any major use. The Bishop's Bible, used primarily by the church authorities, and the Geneva Bible, used by the Puritans. So as we can see, the idea for the translation of the New Bible was not the idea of King James, contrary to the claim that King James wanted a new Bible. He did not authorize a new translation based on his dislike of the Geneva Bible. Although he did dislike the Bible, and he stated that he did, he didn't order the translation for the King James Bible as a response to that, and he wanted to get rid of that Bible. It wasn't his idea to have a new translation of the Bible, although he did agree to it. The granting of the new translation by King James was actually because of a direct request by the Puritans, John Reynolds, themselves, that there need be a new translation. The argument that King James thought that the Geneva Bible was the worst is not an argument against the KJV at all. Many KJV-only advocates today would not say that the Geneva Bible was a terrible translation, and I wouldn't myself. I think it's a reasonably good translation. There are errors in there, but it's not the worst translation about today. Well, they do not believe that it is perfect, like myself, as they believe that the KJV to be, and that it has translational issues. They would still assert that it is a good translation, and they would assert that it is certainly superior to the modern versions, such as the NIV, ESV, and ESV, and the Net Bible, and such. So David W. Daniels from Chick Tracts, a staunch KJV onlyist, stated, referring to the Geneva Bible, "I call it close, but no banana. It's really close. It has a lot of good points to it. It's based on pretty much the right text, but there are some compromises in it, and there are some changes in it." Now, David W. Daniels, if you don't know him, he has written many books, and I'll show you some later on. He has a website, and he does YouTube as well. He is a scholar, a pretty well-known scholar, but he is also he is what would be classed as more KJV onlyist. King James used the creation of the Bible to his advantage in a way that actually would bring these two fighting fractions together. They were to work on the translation, on this new translation together. The Puritans and the traditionalists, they were going to have to work together on this Bible. Now, the translation was allowed by King James, but he wanted the most learned to take time and to take part in the translation, and for the translation to become the one that could be used by the church. And King James is recorded as having stated, and this to be done by the best learned in both the universities, after them to be reviewed by the bishops and the chief learned of the church, from them to be presented to the Privy Council, and lastly to be ratified by his royal authority, and for this whole church to be bound unto it, and none other. So it would therefore be far more accurate to state that King James allowed for a new translation because it was requested by the Puritans, and that he simply wanted the translation to be well translated, as opposed to what he perceived as a not well translated Bible. It's also important to note that while today it is referred to as the authorized version, or the King James Bible, the KJV was never, in fact, officially authorized by the Crown. And it does not declare itself to be so. It was only appointed to be read in churches. At the time of its release, it was often known simply as the New Translation. Although not officially authorized in England, due to the granting of the translation by the king, it would later become known as the authorized version. Now, it was only later that it became known as the King James Bible rather than the authorized version. Being called the King James Bible actually originates in Scotland. It was called the King James Bible, which was then it was called King James's Bible, which was then adapted as the King James Bible. Now, a point that is correct is that King James did not, that he did prohibit the use of marginal notes, or commentary such as that which was found in the Geneva Bible. And again, I'll quote from the book, Mary Withal, he gave his caveat upon a word cast out by my Lord of London, that no marginal notes should be added, having found in them which are annexed to the Geneva translation, which he saw in a Bible given him by an English lady. Some notes very partially untrue, tedious, and favouring too much of dangerous and traitorous conceits. But this in no way is an argument against the KJV itself. Despite King James' obvious dislike of the marginal notes in the Geneva Bible, many of which are in fact very swayed towards Calvinistic theology, King James was not a Calvinist, and the prohibition from including marginal notes within the new translation, contrary to the claim made, the marginal notes in the Geneva Bible were not in any way the reason for the translation being carried out in the first place. It is simply false to claim otherwise, either through an incorrect understanding of why the translation came to take place, or through deliberate deception in order to create an argument against the KJV, which in reality is a straw man. It can also be argued that many Christians today, even those that use this as an argument against the KJV, would not agree with many of the notes that are found within the Geneva Bible themselves. The argument is irrelevant to the argument of whether the KJV is a reliable translation or not. Another argument against the KJV is that the Geneva Bible was the Bible of the Pilgrims. The Pilgrims brought the Geneva Bible with them in 1620 on the Mayflower when they landed in Plymouth. Now, this is not an argument against the KJV itself. It literally has nothing to do with the translation and is actually pointless. However, it must also be noted that while this is true, the Pilgrims did take the Geneva Bible with them. It is also a fact that the Pilgrims also took the King James Bible with them. John Alden's KJV is on display in the Pilgrim Hall Museum today. So, basically, those are some of the arguments that I want to deal with regarding the formation of the KJV Bible, and I'm now just going to move on to look at one more argument that I just want to deal with, and that is which KJV is the correct KJV. Which version of the KJV, basically. Bear with me 1 second. So it's an argument that basically there are different versions of the KJV, and so which KJV is the correct KJV? Is it the 1611? Is it the 1629? The 1638, 1762, or the 1769 version? Which print is the correct one? Is it the Oxford or the Cambridge version? Now, James White stated in his book, The KJV Only Controversy, of which I have here. So this is James White's book, which argues for certain readings within the which we're going to look at in this study. So in this book on page 78, he states, The KJV that is carried by the average KJV advocate today looks very different than the edition that came off the press by Robert Barker in 1611. So all I have to say really about that is, does it, Mr. White? Does it really? You might like to try and make it sound or appear so, but that really doesn't make it fact. While I am confronted with this argument, I immediately know, or when I'm confronted with this, I immediately know that the person using the argument has not really studied this subject in any great detail. And almost certainly they have heard this argument somewhere, maybe from James White's book, but they are just regurgitating it as if it was a fact. They've not really bothered to check whether it's true or not. And I know that they have not checked it, as if they had, they would not be using the argument. The KJV has never been revised. This is just a fact. Whether the person saying it knows it or whether they don't. The revisions that the person so assuredly refers to were not revisions at all, and it is rather dishonest to say otherwise. For a start, the Greek text that underlines the KJV was not and has not been changed. The Greek of the KJV was never actually released. Now, this has remained consistent and constant throughout the more than 400 years since the KJV was first translated, way back in 1611. And I do have a 1611 Bible, the 1611 KJV here. That's the 1611 edition. So it's the text which underlines that underlies the KJV, that the KJV Bible has remained consistent and the same throughout the 400 years since the KJV, or 410 years since it was translated by the or since it was printed by the aforementioned Robert Barker. Unlike the modern versions, where the underlying Greek text is constantly being changed. So we have, this is the Nestle-Aland 28th edition. This is the 27th edition. They are not the same. They're working on the 29th edition at the moment as well. So they change slightly, but they are different texts, and so the Nestle-Aland text really has been going for about 120 years, or the text of the modern Bibles. They're underlying those modern Bibles, and they're already on their 28th, nearly 29th edition in that time. So while there hasn't been revisions, there have been updates to the KJV. Now, this is an important difference. The first update to the KJV was to change the font from Gothic to Roman. Now, if anybody has seen a 1611 KJV, the font is very difficult to read. It's not the easiest to read. So they updated that. They changed it from the Gothic from Gothic to Roman. The type of text. No words were changed. Just the ability to read them were made a little easier. The other updates between 1611 and 1629 were simple printing error corrections. Printing errors most certainly did occur within the original printing of the Bible. You have to remember that this was very early in the printing press, and the way that books were printed back then, is basically letter by letter. Is nothing like the way that it is done today, and it was very, very time consuming, and printing errors did happen. So between 1611 and 1629, there were printing error corrections. And I don't think that anybody that advocates for KJV, the KJV Bible, would argue against that. Printing errors are exactly that. They are printing errors. They're printing errors not in the handwritten text itself, but in the in the Bible itself. Hello, Freddie. Back again. I haven't bored you with any of my other videos, so you've decided to come back with this one. This one might bore you. So yeah, these were printing errors. They weren't errors in the actual text itself. Now, one such printing error, and I'll explain one of those, is in 1 Corinthians 15:1 through 6. The printer numbered the verses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 7. The verses themselves are correct, but obviously the second 5 should have been a 6. And this was corrected and updated. Another such example is found in Psalm 69:32, where the printer put good instead of God. So Psalm 69:32, your heart shall live that seek good. The printer error correction was made in 1617. Again, this was not an error with the KJ, with the text itself, but with the print. And this was changed then back to God as it should be. There are a number of cases where the word he or she appears when the opposite should have been the correct rendering. So it wasn't, again, it's not any incorrect with the text. It's just the printing errors put she or he instead. Now, two of the KJV translators themselves, Samuel Ward and John Boyce, corrected these printing errors, or as we would call them, probably typos. It must be pointed out that the spelling of many English words at the time had not been finalized when the 1611 translation was done. And many words that were spelt differently than they are today, or how they would eventually end up being spelt. Now, in one such example, you can see in Genesis 21:12 that there are two incidents where the word said is stated. Then the Lord said unto Abraham, let it not be grievous unto thee because of the lad and of thy bondmaid, and in all that Sarah hath said unto the higher voice, for in Isaac shall thy seed be called. Now, the word said is spelt differently in the two different occurrences. In the first one, it's spelled S-A-Y-D-E, and in the second is S-A-I-D-E. So both of them are spelt differently. And if we also, the letter U, when it says unto, it's got V-N-T-O instead of U-N-T-O, unto. So lad was spelt with double D. Bondmaid is spelt differently. So there was lots of different basically it's just the way that the words were spelt, but these were all changed. But this wasn't the changing of the text. This is the changing of the spelling of the words, and Simple updated that. There's no alteration to the underlying text. Now, one specific update is the Blayney revision, and this one will get used quite a lot. In 1769, Dr. Benjamin Blayney produced an edition of the KJV. Many people, those who don't know any better, James White included, love to point to the 1769 Blayney revisions to proclaim that the KJV has indeed gone through literally thousands of changes. However, what they do not realize, probably again because they have not actually bothered to find out what those changes were, is that the Blayney version, or that Blayney himself, did not change the text again of the KJV. The thousands of changes he made were the updating of the spelling of many of the words to the finalized spelling that had now been more, the English language has become more formalized, and the spelling of words has been finalized, and that's what he did. He changed the words, the spelling of those words. He changed said to said, S-A-I-D, sin, S-I-N-N-E, to the now modern S-I-N, sin, days, D-A-Y-E-S, to days, son, S-O-N-N-E, to son, S-O-N. So this is basically what he did. He changed the words, the spelling of the words. He also edited some of the punctuation and removed the capitalization of some words like ark, which was originally printed with a capital R. He reduced that down to a normal A. It was a capital A, and he reduced that down to a normal A. Some words that were not previously italicized were put in italics. He also corrected the last of the printing errors as well that had not been caught, such as, and this verse is used as well in number 614, where it has and one lamb without blemish for peace offerings in the 1611 KJV, but the finalized version has and one ram instead of lamb without blemish for peace offerings. And if you have a look at a modern version of the KJV, it has the word ram. The 1611 version that I showed you has the word lamb there instead. And as you and basically that is it. The Hebrew behind the English is ram. It was always meant to be ram. However, in the verse, the word lamb appears 2 other times. So in number 614, and he shall offer his offerings unto the Lord, one he lamb of the first year without blemish for a burnt offering, and one ewe lamb for the first year without blemish for a sin offering, and one ram, or in the 1611 it says obviously the lamb without blemish for peace offerings. So basically what happened is that the printer has just made a mistake and used the word lamb, as he has already done that twice in the verse. And that's it. Unless you checked word for word, which is obviously what the 2 translators who went back and did, you would not notice these kind of errors that appeared, these printing errors that appeared in the original 1611 KJV, unless you checked word for word, which Blayney did. But that's it. He never changed the actual wording of the KJV. Now, lastly, I'm just going to look at the Oxford versus Cambridge argument. So there are basically two printers of the KJV, the Oxford Press and the Cambridge Press. Now, there are some people who attack the inerrancy of the KJV, and which will proclaim which version, which press, which print is the correct one. Is it the Cambridge or is it the Oxford? Now, this problem is less of a problem than what those using the argument would like to think that there is. There are actually three differences between the Oxford print and the Cambridge print. There's a difference in wording, but not in meaning. And I'll explain that. So they appear in Jeremiah 34:16, Nahum 3:16, and in 2 Chronicles 33:19. Now, I'll start with Jeremiah. And so it states in the Oxford, "But ye turned and polluted my name, and caused every man his servant, and every man his handmaid, which he had set at liberty at their pleasure, to return, and brought them into subjection to be unto you for servants and for handmaids." And the Cambridge, "But ye turned and polluted my name, and caused every man his servant, every man his handmaid, whom ye had set at liberty at their pleasure, to return, and brought them into subjection to be unto you for servants and for handmaids." If we go to the manuscript evidence, so the difference there is whom he had set at liberty, and so that's the Oxford, and the Cambridge says whom ye had set at liberty. So the difference there is between he and ye. So if we go to the manuscript evidence, the more correct reading based on the Hebrew is ye, not he. But even if we go with the reading he, there is no difference whatsoever. He would be referring to the group collectively, but singularly speaking of each individual, whereas ye refers to each individual member as the collective group. So there is no difference there between them. One of them is basically just calling the individual as the group, and the other one is referring to each individual. So the second one is in 2 Chronicles 33:19. "His prayer also, and how God was entreated of him, and all his sins, and his trespass, and the places wherein he built high places, and set up groves and graven images before he was humbled. Behold, they are written among the sayings of the seers." And that's in the Oxford. The Cambridge reads, "His prayer also, and how God was entreated of him, and all his sin, and his trespass, and the places wherein he built high places, and set up groves and graven images before he was humbled. Behold, they are written among the sayings of the seers." So there is no real difference between sins, which appears in the Oxford, where it says, "And God was entreated of him of all his sins," and the Cambridge, which says, "And God was entreated of him and all his sin." Sins is the plural of sin, but sin is inclusive of all sins. So if you say, "I have sin," it doesn't necessitate that you are only talking about one sin. You can be talking about all your sins, and you've just combined it and said, "I have sin." So, but you can also say, "I have sins" in the English. It's perfectly correct to state sin or sins, and they both refer to all your sins. One is individually, again, and the other is collectively. And the final one is in Nahum 3:16, thou hast multiplied thy merchants above the stars of heaven. The cankerworm spoileth and fleeth away. And in the Cambridge, it says, thou hast multiplied thy merchants above the stars of heaven. The cankerworm spoileth and flieth away. A cankerworm does not fly. In the context, a literal flying is not what is being inferred. It is rather taking a flight, as in to flee. So while one says flee or fleeth and the other says flieth, you can use flieth in the same sense to mean flee. And the Oxford Dictionary gives, as an example, if you go to the Oxford English Dictionary, you will see under flee, you will have an act of escape, running away, or avoid something. That's a definition under the word flight. So it means flee, to flee something, to escape away, or avoiding something. And flight here is exactly the same meaning as flee, to flee something. And that's it. That is the Oxford versus Cambridge argument. So when we properly understand and we look at the arguments that are used here, there are no real arguments against the KJV and the additions or the revisions of the KJV. So basically, that's it for this video. For this presentation of what I wanted to present. I am, as I've stated, going to go through and look at individual verses, individual readings that we find. The ending of Mark, the last 12 verses of Mark 16, the pericope adulterae, also 1 John 5:7. I want to go and look at those. Jude 1:5, whether it says Jesus there. So also we're going to look at the only begotten God or the only begotten Son in John 1:18, and lots of other different readings. Acts 8:37 particularly as well. But I also want to look at in the future videos. So I want to start looking at, I'm going to go into the origination of the Septuagint. I don't really follow the or believe in a Greek Septuagint. Certainly I don't believe that Jesus that Jesus read from the Greek Septuagint, and I don't believe that he quoted it, and I don't believe that the writers of the KJV did that either. The writers of the New Testament used the Greek Septuagint instead as well. So I'm gonna. So that's basically for this video. I am going to, again, I will open it up to see if anybody would like to come on and discuss any of the points that I've made in this video. So I need to create a link. So yeah, if anybody would want to come on and discuss, they are more than welcome to do so. Obviously, I'm not going to hang about too long. If people don't want to come on and discuss, you can. If you don't want to come on, you can make comments in the comment section. If you would prefer to do that, you don't actually have to come on to the onto the stream. But I was hoping that I would get some of the people that again disagree with me on the points that I make. I think it's okay for people that agree with me to come on. That's awesome, and they'd be more than welcome. But it seems that a lot of the people that disagree with me, they tell me that they're going to come and partake in the I don't, Freddie, it doesn't really matter about the education. It's like, there are obviously, study is one thing, but we've all heard arguments about the KJV or the modern critical texts. And really, what I want to do is, although I'm not telling anybody to be to read the KJV instead of any of the other modern the modern versions. What I would like to do, and like I say, I really wanted some of the people that interact with me on other channels to come on and discuss and where they feel that I am incorrect and where I'm wrong, even if they ultimately they disagree and say that yes, they would like to, they believe that the modern text is the text that you should follow. I think that we should be, at least, if you're going to make arguments against my position, they should be at least accurate, and they should be. They shouldn't be straw man arguments, and they shouldn't be repeated arguments, regurgitated arguments that are made by many people who are simply regurgitating something that they read in a book because somebody said it, without actually checking on whether those accusations are correct or not. Okay, so Freddie has decided that he would like to come on. So I shall bring him in and say hello.
Hello, mate. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine.
Good.
I know you probably don't know much about me, so let me just kind of introduce myself.
Yes.
I live in the United States, originally born and raised in California. I recently moved to Tennessee, where I currently reside, about a year ago, January of 2021. I became aware of you and others on YouTube about the last part of 2021, the last few months or so, and got involved listening to Flow primarily. You might be familiar with Flow.
Yeah.
Josiah, Christian Man, Solomon, Taylor. You know, I think you're probably familiar with the so-called gang, the
Yeah.
crew
Yeah.
of people.
So would you classify yourself as Unitarian? Would you be along with that in the Unitarian? Is that what brought you to that kind of these people, this group?
Yes, I'm not a Trinitarian. I never was.
Okay.
I at one time I did just accept that Jesus was God. Um, I was raised Catholic. Uh, just so you know as well, I'm 65 years old, so I've been around a while. But I was raised Catholic. I left the Catholic Church at 12, and I didn't really live as a Christian until I was I made a commitment until I was about 23 or 22. And that was in 1979 when I repented and got water baptized. Although I grew up in a religious home, so to speak. My mom was Catholic. That's how I was raised Catholic. My dad was Christian. And there was conflict within the house. I don't mean just religiously or spiritually. So um, that kind of had a lot to do with me not going to church and not living for God for most of my young teenage and young adult life uh, until I did, like I said, until I was about 23. And then I went into the Pentecostal apostolic related church, and they were Trinitarian and oneness, so it was a mixture. I didn't really get involved in the theology of it. I kind of struggled with it at first when I made the commitment, and as I was becoming a little more knowledgeable, I confronted a particular pastor in the apostolic church. There was a falling out. I left, went to another similar church, but I just soon kind of left. I kind of eased my way out of going. My wife remained in that one church. She eventually left. Then I went back into the world. It was kind of my wilderness. Uh, I was probably about 30 years of being away from God, but I had that in me. I lived my life struggling with it because I knew that I knew of God. I knew that's what I had to become and live, but I struggled. So it was painful living as a depraved sinner, so to speak.
Mm.
And then eventually I came back in 2012, finally made a commitment, went back to church that was pretty much Pentecostal related, had another falling out there eventually after a few years. This is all happening in California. And at 2015, I wasn't going to any church because of this falling out. I became involved on some social media, started watching some YouTube. Uh, it was odd. One of my early persons on YouTube was an older gentleman. You may have heard him. His name is Cal by the Trinity Delusion.
Yeah. Brother
And
Cal. Yeah.
yeah, and then another young kid. I can't remember his name, but his is the Trinity Heresy. Is his, and then I seen the I forget John. I think it's John Schoenheist or something.
Yeah,
Unitarian.
I'm not really sure how to say his name.
Yeah,
But
Schoenheist. Something
yeah,
like
but
that. And
yeah.
then I seen Bill Schlegel. I saw on there Dale Tuggy, Sean
Mm-hmm.
Finnegan, Dan Gill. But here's the ironic part of some of that is I moved to Tennessee. In the church I currently go to, Dan Gill is there, the pastor. Dale Tuggy's there, and Bill Schlegel's there. And of course, Dan Gill has some personal ties with Anthony Buzzard. I've not met Anthony Buzzard. I don't actually agree with his theology, other than agreeing that Jesus is not God.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really agree with some of his other things.
Yeah,
But
I think Carlos and Sir Anthony. I think a lot of Unitarians kind of do disagree with much of what they teach. I like them both, actually. I like all of those that you've mentioned, and I watch them. I read their blogs or their websites and stuff. So I don't agree with everything that everybody says, and I'm sure that not everybody agrees with me either. So, but I think the fundamental part there is that we do believe that Jesus is the Messiah, but he's not God, and that's what separates us from obviously the mainstream of Christianity. But I think that with all Christianity, it doesn't matter what you have. There's disagreements. That's why there are so many denominations, because there are so many people that disagree on it's on one thing, or that a denomination can be created just over one specific disagreement between the church, and they have this schism, and a new denomination is created. So not everybody agrees on everything, and if we all agreed, we'd probably be it would probably be the end of the world, because that's when everybody's going to agree. So
I actually see, according to Scripture, I do believe we should agree. Scripture tells us to be like-minded in one accord.
I do. Unfortunately, people read the Bible in different ways, and some people. This is one of the subjects. Some people have a different Bible than what other people have. There are verses that are not included in modern versions of the Bible that are included in the KJV, and that's so that's one of the reasons why I've gone into this. Is people they don't even have the same Bible to read from. Obviously, the Catholics have extra books within theirs, and then you have the Ethiopian book, the Bible, which has 80 books in there as well. So it's very hard to get people to agree on anything really. So while we should, it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that we're going to do it, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a shame. I was obviously, with my age, I was raised on the King James. I like the King James. I'm not a King James only. I currently don't really use it primarily. I would say I went to the New King James in the 90s when I was thinking about it and going back to church. 2012, I kind of went to the New King James as just an easier read.
I'm going to do a video. One of the videos that I will be doing is the differences between the King James version and the New King James version, and there are a lot.
Right, there are.
It was kind of sold, the New King James version, as being basically the King James version, with just updates of the spellings and the grammar and stuff that are so difficult to understand in the KJV, but that's not the case. There are lots and lots of changes within the KJV and the New King James version, and I will do a video on that to highlight some of those differences between the two. The KJV, the New King James version, definitely follows more. It does follow the TR text more, but it does have integration of the modern critical text inside of it as well. And there's lots of words that are kind of changed in there, and like I said, I'm going to go into that more detail when I do the video of it.
One of the biggest changes the New King James did is John 8:58, capitalizing I am. That was atrocious.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
if you don't mind, hold on. I need to use the restroom real quick. If you don't
Okay.
mind, just
Yeah.
hold on a minute, and I'll be right back.
That's fine. I'm just going to bring up John 8, 58, because this is a version. Yeah, I don't know if I can. Hopefully, if I can share my screen, and I can go to there. I don't know if that is sharing. Hopefully, that is sharing, and you can see that. But there, yeah, it's got in the New King James Version right there. The capitalization of I am. Some of the other versions, such as the Amplified Bible and the NLT, they have the capitalization of the A at the beginning of am. And there in the Aramaic Bible, in plain English, we have the I am the living God. So ego eimi, which is the Greek behind I am there. The Aramaic Bible in plain English is translated in ego eimi as I am the living God. How they've managed to do that, I'll never know. But we also have the ISV has a capitalization of I am. The Literal Standard Version has I am. The New American Bible, I am, in the capitalization. So this is not a new thing to have this I am capitalization. It most certainly is an abomination, because it is basically what it is doing is it's trying to say, right, okay, that the I am of John 8:58 is a reference back to
Exodus
3:14 with the I am statement, which is capitalized. And yeah, I have got a video on John 8:58 and a writing on it. But yeah, that is one of the big blunders, and deliberately so, of the New King James Version.
Yeah, it's a crime. The other big crime scripturally, which is in all the Bibles, is the capitalization of the W in word in John 1. That is a complete crime. It's pathetic.
Yeah, the King James Version does do that in John 1, in John 1:1. Yeah, I don't know if I can bring that up. Yeah, if I share my screen again. Yeah, most Bibles obviously has that capitalization of the W there. Within my understanding of what the word is, I don't really have a problem with the capitalization there of that, to be honest. I fully understand when Unitarians would have a problem with that. It doesn't affect my understanding of John 1:1, which honestly, I've spoken about this in the past, is John 1:1 is the only verse in the entire Bible that really, when it comes to the theology of it, or the understanding of that particular verse in its deity sense, or trying to what it's actually stating. I do have a writing, and I do believe what I've written, but I'm not 100% set on that particular on the understanding of 1 John 1. Sorry, of John 1:1. Yeah. So So you went on to the KJV, the New King James Version. What do you use now?
I primarily use the RSV, which, if you know, it is a subsidiary of the King James. It's an offshoot of it. It keeps some of the King James language, the thee, the lout, the thous,
Yeah.
type things, but it also is similar to the New King James, but it does have its own slant. And I've read it all the way through, and I really quite like it a lot. I think it probably has the best translation out there. And I'm not saying it's the best, all right?
Mm-hmm.
But from what I've read and looked into, because I've not read obviously every single translated Bible there are out there. So, but knowing the King James and the New King James, familiar with that, and kind of looking into a few others of just scripturally here and there, like the stupid NIV and the Message, and a few others, the ESV. But I would personally promote the RSV. Now the new RSV is okay. The reason I don't really use that and is primarily based on one scripture, and that's John 1:18, because it went and when it went against the RSV, because it goes and says that Jesus is the begotten God,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, how could it do it? If you're the new RSV, why don't you just improve it, new and improved version? But then you went back into the caveman days and did that. Not even the King James has the begotten God. So,
well, the King James has begotten Son there, because the text that and like I say, I will do this as a video. The text that underlines the KJV, which is obviously the TR text, has Son, whereas the modern texts, which are based primarily on the Alexandrian line, uh, the Nestle-Aland text, that has the only begotten God there. So it's based on the incorrect reading, and so what you'll find is that many of these modern versions, they are constantly changing. So you've got new editions of, like, the ESV, the NIV, and when they produce their new versions, they changed the text, and quite often what they'll change the text because the text that underlines the their the translation itself, the Greek text that underlies that, has changed. And that's when you have the Nestle-Aland text, which underlies them, the United Bible Society text, which is the same text. So you have the UBS 5 and you have the Nestle-Aland 28 at the moment. Both of those texts are the same. The text that underlies that has changed. So from the 27th edition to the 28th edition, there are changes within the text, and so the modern texts will follow those new editions. Some will follow quicker than others. Some won't follow a specific reading, because basically, when what you have is all of these different versions, they're all translated or looked at by committees, who basically look at the readings, and there you have the NIV committee, you have the ESV committee, you have the NASB committee, and they will decide amongst themselves on which reading is the correct reading. So you basically have different committees, different groups of people deciding on what is and what isn't scripture. And you'll often notice that, so the NIV does this quite often. They'll change the a reading, and then they'll change it back again in their next version. So it's constantly changing. That's why the KJV has never changed, and that was my what I stated. The text that underlies that has never changed. So we have the KJV, which has just remained the constant, and then you have all of these modern versions of the Bible which change constantly. And they will change again in the next edition because, like I say, the Nestle Aland 29 will be coming out, and then we'll have more changes within that, and then you'll have the modern versions, which then will change with those changes of the underlying text. So you're never, if you use a modern version, you are always going to be susceptible to having your version changed within the next update of that particular version that you use.
It's
So
kind of
yeah,
my understanding that some of these changes are due to copyright laws.
yeah. Well,
translations have to have X amount of words that are different. You know,
yeah.
so
The King James Bible is not copywritten. All of these other modern versions are.
right.
And I think there are something like there's something at least 200 different modern versions of the Bible. Some are paraphrases, some are more literal translations. But the one thing that almost all of them have in common is that they are all based on the Nestle Aland text, and not the TR text. Which so the Textus Receptus. So there are people which are Textus Receptus only. Are there Unitarian versions? I'm not, to be honest. I think there are. I can't think of one off at the top of my head, but I am pretty sure that there are Unitarian versions of the Bible. Obviously, sorry, the New World Translation would be classified as a Unitarian version of the Bible because obviously Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in the deity of God, but they do believe in the pre-existence. They don't believe in the deity of Jesus as God, but they do believe in the pre-existence of Jesus. So the New World Translation would be classified as a Unitarian version. And I am trying to think of another one. I know that Christopher Sparks created a translation. He is Unitarian, so I do believe, obviously, that would be a Unitarian translation. It is his own translation, so I don't know whether anybody... I don't know how serious other people would classify that translation as, whether they would consider that to be a proper Unitarian version or not. But yeah, he has a version which is Unitarian. I think possibly Anthony Buzzard did do one. Dustin Smith, maybe. The truth is, I can't think of any other than those off the top of my head. But maybe Anthony Buzzard did one, and maybe Dustin Smith.
But you might want to look into the RSV. I'm not saying it is Unitarian, but it's really a good translation. I highly recommend it. I have a caveat. I don't claim to be Unitarian. I don't call myself Unitarian. I don't label myself as a Unitarian. Although basically I believe like what these Unitarians believe. I just don't label myself as that.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I didn't used to label myself as Unitarian. I only kind of really label myself that now, because kind of other people have labeled me as that, and it's kind of the way to kind of make it a little bit more clear of what I believe. Unitarian, biblical Unitarian. I'm not really that bothered about labels. I believe that Jesus is not God, and if that's Unitarian, all of these modern titles and names which are being thrown about at the moment, not really that.
Yeah, I'm not, I only say that because of the negative connotation that it has with universalism. So people cannot divorce the biblical Unitarian from Unitarian Universalism. So that's why I kind of shy away from it.
Yeah,
I don't shy away from associating with Unitarians. Like I said, the church I go to is predominantly Unitarian. People I know are Unitarian, and I don't have a problem saying I'm Unitarian in a group session or like here, and if somebody says, "Are you Unitarian?" I'll say, "Yeah," basically, just like you say, just so that people understand that I'm not Trinitarian, I'm not oneness, I'm not anything other than. But I typically would just say I'm a scriptural Christian. See, some people even have a hard time using the word Christian because of how it's been just just ruined with everyone is a Christian, but they're really not a Christian. So people don't want to, it's like the word's been hijacked, just like other words. But either it's just how you use it, how you come across. I'm not going to let people hijack a word and then shy away from it. No, I'm a Christian, and if people claim they're a Christian but they don't act like it, it's on them. If they're a hypocrite, well, that's on them. It doesn't make me a less of a Christian because I call myself a Christian and they call themselves, but they're a hypocrite and they're not. So it's up to the individual.
So it's the revised standard version. Yours isn't? You said, isn't it? Not the revised English Bible.
Right, the RSV, the revised standard version. Yeah,
that's the REB. I don't have an RSV. I've got to be honest.
It's simple. I have one on my phone, an app. I usually have an app on the phone.
Yeah,
I have the book, but I usually also, online use them.
Yeah, I use I've got online ones as well, but they've only got the so I was looking on Bible Hub, and they've only got the new revised standard version. Because what I wanted to do, I want to see.
Bible Gateway has the RSV. They have a lot of available versions. Bible Gateway does.
Let me go on Gateway.
Blue Letter Bible does as well.
I want to just check on the on Jude 1:5 what it has there.
Jude 1:5.
Yeah. So I found it. Okay, so it has he, I think. He who saved the people out of the land of Egypt. That's like, yeah. Yeah, because obviously a lot of the modern versions of the Bible and the 28th edition has Jesus in that verse. So Jesus saved a people out of Egypt.
Yeah.
So that's that would be, I would consider to again, that's it's quite a Alexandrian line, and I'll do a video on Jude 1:5 and the evidence for and against that, the readings that go in there. Yeah, so basically, that is that's all really for this video. I'm not really sure that there's much more to discuss.
No, it's fine. I appreciate it. I appreciate you letting me on and
No, I
letting
do
hearing my
appreciate.
little
Yeah.
abridged story of my life,
Mhm.
a short version, just to kind of introduce you. But
Yeah.
I thank you for the time and your ear. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I've definitely seen like your the 13 above on other videos that I've taken part in, or that you've been there at least.
Yeah, I've interacted with others, the people that I've mentioned. I have my own channel. I haven't done anything with it yet. I plan to, but I'm just not in a hurry to.
Hmm.
I've just been kind of getting my feet wet, interacting with people on their channels. Uh, I recently started a Facebook with the same logo, but I just go by Freddie. I don't go by 13 above, but it's related.
Hmm.
My channel is 13 above, but I just but my I use the 13 above logo, but I use my name on my Facebook. So uh,
And
anyways,
you are you in the all the Unitarian Facebook pages in there, or?
like One God Report. I subscribe to the One God Report. I
Okay.
think I've subscribed to the One Unitarian. I forget which one it is. I subscribe to the Carlos, what well, the Human Jesus or whatever he has, the
Yeah,
one he has. So
there's a particular one that I've been that removed me um, from from it, and I can't even remember why. They didn't like something that I was teaching, so that I was
I did
removed.
watch your little rebuttal with Josiah regarding the the controversy over the Gospel of John, and
Hmm.
I don't agree with his analysis. I listened just very little. I didn't have a lot of time, but what I've heard from you, I agreed with you. Um, I do tend to agree with you on what I've heard from you, so which is good. But
That's because
uh,
I'm correct.
yeah, so that means I'm correct as well. So
Yeah, that's always a good place to be. If you follow me, then you'll follow in truth, as it states. So, yeah, no, I don't claim to have all truth, and um, yeah, I say it basically on every video that I do. I'm just another man that is trying to seek truth, that is trying to look into scripture and what it teaches, and I just study, and I'm interested in knowing other people's views. I'm interested in why they believe what they believe. I'm interested in the obviously I'm interested in coming to the actual real truth. I don't claim to have that on every subject, and I'm always willing to change my view on something if I feel that I've been shown wrong, and I have actually changed my beliefs on certain things. Um, when I came to be a Christian when I was 33, I just went head straight into to read the Bible, and I went to Trinitarian Church straight away. But what I and I kind of I was aware of what Christianity taught. I wasn't a Christian at the time, but I was kind of aware of what the certain aspects of what Christianity teaches, and I've read the Bible, and I found that a lot of that was in error. Um, but then I've also since then I used to believe in certain doctrines that somebody has said something to me, and I've gone, okay, well, I need to study that. and then I've studied it, and I've changed my mind on it. I went from being somebody that thought that the law had passed to believing that we were still under the law, and I actually started to keep the Sabbath. And then I changed my mind again after further study. I didn't go down it too long, to be honest. I wasn't doing the Sabbath for too long, but that was something I did. So we're not infallible. We're all open to mistakes, which is something which on that particular thing I felt that I was. But yeah, I'm more interested in correcting incorrect arguments, and that's what I felt like what I did with Josiah on the Gospel of John. Is I'm not saying that he isn't correct, although I don't believe he is. My point was I wanted to correct the false information that was being stated in order to support his position. It wasn't so much an argument against his position, it was more against the evidence that was used to support it. And so that's what I'm going to be doing with this, with these looking into the to the KJV. Is I'm not saying that the position of KJV only is correct. I'm not saying that you should only use a KJV in English, although that's what I do, and that's what I believe is that the KJV in English is the only correct version of the Bible. What I want to do is correct the incorrect arguments against the KJV. And it's the incorrect arguments against the KJV that I wish to deal with in this.
So what's your outlook on 1 John 5:7?
Okay, so yeah, 1 John 5:7, I absolutely love the verse for a start.
I don't have a problem with it. I understand it may be a forgery. I've slightly looked into it. I've not delved into it and done a lot of deep research, but I'm aware of the Johannine comma. You know, I'm aware that it's potentially a forgery. You know, I've heard it. I'm aware of it, but I've not really studied it to affirm that it is a forgery. It's just from my point of view, it's hearsay. So I don't, you know, I'm not one to say yes it is and or no it isn't, but I just accept it. But it doesn't affirm the Trinity in that verse, anyways.
No, that's why I say I absolutely love 1 John 5:7. It is one of the best Unitarian verses when you fully understand it. And I have a writing, and I will be, like I said, that is one of the verses that I'm going to be specifically looking at, is the 1 John 5:7. I fully accept it, and I believe that it is a Unitarian verse, and I think it teaches Unitarianism brilliantly. But it's the only verse in the entire Bible. There's one word in Revelation that I'm not too sure about. It's the only verse in the entire Bible that if somebody else rejected it, I wouldn't have a problem with it. There are verses like Acts 8:37, which fundamentally I would argue is 100% scripture. The last 12 verses of the Gospel of Mark, 100% I would argue that are scripture. 1 John 5:7 is the only one where I can see why people would reject it, although I do accept it. And the problem with the arguments against 1 John 5:7 is they are very, very misrepresented. They are the vast majority of the arguments against 1 John 5:7 are factually incorrect. And there is far more evidence for the inclusion of 1 John 5:7 than the normal somebody that is going to argue against it will ever state. There is so much evidence for 1 John 5:7 and the inclusion of it that really I can't see how anybody rejects it. But the evidence is not stated in the major places where it should be stated by modern scholars. They are not giving the full evidence for the verse, and they're also basically they are regurgitating and repeating arguments against the verse that are factually incorrect.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. Like I said, what one I do have that I've come to find out is incorrect as far as what I've seen so far is Revelation 1:11 regarding the apparent insertion of Omega, Alpha and Omega. So if you look at the Greek, it's omitted. The RSV does not have it like the King James has.
So again,
yeah.
with the exclusion of that is you're talking about two textual transmission lines. You're talking about the Alexandrian line, and you're talking about the Textus Receptus. So like so you basically have the Byzantine line and the Textus Receptus, which are similar. They're not exactly the same, but they're similar. And then you obviously have the Alexandrian line of manuscripts. We have something like nearly 6,000 manuscripts today. We have an abundance of manuscripts. I mean, in comparison to obviously all the manuscripts that have existed, we have just a small, minute amount of them, but we do have still a huge amount. And the fact is that roughly 99% of those manuscripts are they support the readings of the KJV, and we have something like around about 45 to 50 manuscripts that are Alexandrian line, and that's it. But
I'd be interested in your King James analysis, so I'll try to.
Yeah.
I'll try to
so the 1 John 5:7, we'd definitely be doing that, and I'll look into the Revelation 11. I'm not 1:11. I'm not sure if I've done a writing on who is the Alpha and the Omega, but I haven't. I don't think I've looked into the
people need to slow down when they read the book of Revelation. And again, the error there is the person that put certain words in red, assuming Jesus is speaking when clearly it isn't. It's God, especially in the early part of it. The first.
Well, it's actually the angel.
Well, yes, I've said that the angel the angel is speaking throughout the whole book of Revelation.
There's only two people two beings in the whole entire Revelation,
right. And that's what a lot of people don't see. And I've said that so many times with people on the YouTube channels, with people on. I do a lot of Twitter work, And
Yeah.
I say that, yeah, you're one
I
of
mean,
the only other few ones that have
yeah.
come
Well,
across. And I
that's
says, look,
explicitly stated at the beginning of
right,
the book,
right,
when God sends the revelation of Jesus, and Jesus sends his angel to
right,
proclaim it to John. It's all the way through. Whenever you see either, if it's God or Jesus speaking, it doesn't at this point, it doesn't matter. But it's actually the angel speaking on their behalf,
right.
as them, all
I
the way
agree.
through. John says he turns around to see who was speaking
Yeah.
to him, and he sees the angel, and the angel, he bows to the angel, and so it all the way through, it is the angel. So yeah. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm
I'll
gonna
look
like
into.
you. I'm gonna like you because you have the same thinking mind as I do. I think that's good.
Well, again, I am correct on that point. So if we have the same agreement, then you're correct as well. So that's good. It's always good to be correct, but it's also good to be corrected as well. There's no
Yeah,
problem with being corrected.
I've been corrected, and I'm still being corrected. That's that's what I
Yeah.
have a wife for.
Um. Yeah. So this one is going back to 1 John 5:7. So it was in the third edition of the TR. So this was when Erasmus added, apparently, the 1 John 5:7 into the Textus Receptus, because he didn't use it in his first two editions. But I will go through that when I do 1 John 5:7. But some of the assertions that are made about the edition by Erasmus, and how he created the Textus Receptus. Some of the accusations against Erasmus are just ridiculous. But I'll deal with that in more detail when I actually go into the verse itself.
By the way, are you on Facebook?
I'm on Facebook, and I'm in the
Well, look me up and follow, or I'll look you up and follow, and
yeah,
whoever.
I've got so I've got my own Facebook page. So
I'm
that's
just
where,
on it. I don't. Yeah, I haven't really done anything.
So
You
if
know,
you search for just following truth on Facebook, it should bring me up. I have all my videos and teachings, and I post a lot of my writings on there as well. So, but obviously they're on my website as well, www.followingtruth.com. For anybody that wants to have a look at that. Uh, Again, I do hope that at some point somebody who disagrees with my position is willing to come on and discuss the KJV with me, and not just that, but some of the readings as well. Uh, Specifically, the origination of the Septuagint, which I
Yeah, I agree with you that I don't believe Jesus quoted from it. I believe he quoted from their own Hebrew
mhm,
text. Um, that's just what I believe.
yeah. Well, I'm going to look into the evidence that that there was a BC Septuagint, because I don't actually believe that there was a BC Septuagint. These are
Well, it makes sense to me only because the Greek were in control in the BC era, prior to the Roman Empire taking over. So, I don't have a problem with it. It makes sense to me. Greeks were in control, and the Jews lived there, and they probably wanted the translation into their language. So it makes sense to me whether it is or isn't. It's not, it's not a game breaker to me either way. I don't have
So
a problem.
this here is the evidence for a BC Septuagint. That's it. It's the letter of Aristeas, which again, like I say, in a future video, I'm going to go through that, and I'm going to show that the evidence for a BC Septuagint just isn't there, even though it's stated and it's I'm obviously very, very much against scholarship in that sense, but I do believe that the Septuagint has, or the story of the Septuagint, of its creation, its origination, has just been accepted as truth, as a fact, without really studying it. Now, the letter of Aristeas, which is the primary source, it is the primary evidence for the Septuagint, has been it is rejected by most scholars as being a forgery, as being pseudo, and yet it's taken as a fact that that there was a Septuagint, but the evidence for the Septuagint is rejected by most scholars. It to me, it makes no sense on why that is done. Why you're kind of it's circular, and it destroys its own itself, but it hasn't destroyed itself, and it's very strange to me why.
So do you have an opinion as to when the Septuagint originated?
So I believe, so yeah, so I believe that the Septuagint was created after the New Testament was created.
And what makes you think that? What would be the motivation for that?
Okay, so yeah, we're going to go into a separate subject, but
Well, we can save it for another time. That
yeah.
takes time,
So
because I know that.
so quickly, so basically, the evidence for the BC Septuagint just isn't there. So when you have you have lots of quotations of the Old Testament in the New Testament, and there are many times when the quotation in the New Testament doesn't match the quotation in the Old Testament if you follow the Masoretic text rather than the Septuagint. But when you go back into this, if you go in to have a look at the translate or the quotation in the Septuagint, it will often match with the
Greek New Testament.
With the Greek New Testament text.
That makes sense.
What I believe was done was because there seem to be errors in the New Testament where the quotations don't match. Somebody decided, and I do have suspicions of who that was, for their own personal benefit, that this was later retrospectively translated to match. And I will show some evidence of why I believe that the quotations are added later, and that they weren't the Greek Greek LXX was not used. There are times when Paul will quote scripture, and he will quote 4 or 5 different verses in one particular section, and I'll show this as evidence, but there are times when he will quote different verses. The thing is that when it comes to a New Testament quotation, it doesn't have to be an exact quotation. Right? The New Testament often quotes the Old Testament, but doesn't quote it verbatim. It would reference it, or it will. The New Testament writers will pick certain parts of a verse and they will combine it with certain parts of another verse. When they're trying to make a point, they will pick different parts of the Old Testament that they want to try and assert. So they will take a section of one verse or even a whole verse, and then they'll use parts of another verse. And we can see this.
Yeah, see, what you said makes sense, especially when you look at Hebrews 1, and there definitely seems to be it doesn't match up well with Psalm 45 with thy throne, O God, and whatnot. Because I even when I read Hebrews, I never ever took it that Jesus is being called God there. I just never I never saw it even in my youth, and only later on did hearing people say it, and I'm going, what? Really? In my in my youth of not even having any knowledge, I never read that until later. It was brought to my attention, and then I'm like, well, you guys are like reading into it here. You're making it, and you look at the Psalms, and it's like, okay, there is a little bit of deviation, but it can't contradict. And with you bringing up the translation of the similarity of the Septuagint, now it makes sense, because there's obviously some motive there to be changed.
I will. So I'm just going to bring up just for this now. I will show this more in detail when I go into doing the Septuagint. So let me. I just need to try and find this verse. If I can find it. So basically, what we have is.
Before I forget, I want to leave you with a question and a thought. When they talk about Jesus saying, and the prophet spoke of him as a Nazarene, but we don't find any specific scripture that's referencing that. So maybe I can get your thoughts on that later. You don't have to delve into it now, but just
I won't delve into it now, but I have written a passage on that. I have written on that. So yeah. Let's see if I can bring this up. If I can find where Paul. I think it's in a separate verse. Might be in there. Yeah, I'm not sure where I've got it. Why don't I have that? So I have a specific evidence of where the Paul quotes the Old Testament, and he basically cherry picks the different parts of the verse that he wants to do. I don't know why I can't find that. Where is it? But he cherry picks from the Old Testament. and he combines about 5 or 6 different passages all together. And what you find is that if you go into the Septuagint, some of the Bible, some of the manuscripts, what they've done is not understanding that what Paul has done is that he's taken these different parts of the Bible, the different verses, and combined them all together. He starts off in one of the Psalms, and what the Greek LXX, the Septuagint, does is it takes all of the portion that Paul quotes, all of these different verses, and it puts them all word for word into the same psalm, into one verse. So you can see that the LXX, the writer of the LXX, has gone to Paul, which means that Paul had to have already been written, and he takes all of those verses that Paul has taken from different parts of the Old Testament, and he goes, well, I can't figure out why Paul has written all of this, and then he inserts it all into the one verse. And so you can clearly see that the LXX has been retrospectively written. It has been written in order to make the New Testament quotations match the Old Testament, because they don't. They don't match the Masoretic text, and so the the LXX writers, or whoever that was, had to. They've literally changed the text in order to have the New Testament match the Old Testament, or rather, the Old Testament match the New Testament, which is not a good thing to do. And why?
Interesting.
Yeah, and we have explicit evidence of that. And I don't know why. I don't seem to.
I'm kind of, while we're talking, I was trying to search you on Facebook, and I you're not coming up for some.
So, well, maybe.
Are you following Truth LJ? The same thing here?
Probably on Facebook now. I think it's just following truth.
Follow in truth.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely got this.
Yeah, I don't know. Might be easier for you to find me there. Just Freddie Churro, and you'll see my emblem.
Okay, right. I'll have a look. Right, I found it. So I'm going to share my screen, and if you can let me know whether you can see this. Can you see my screen?
I just see the two logos on there right now.
So you can't see.
I mean, I see you, and I see my logo on there. That's all I see on the screen.
Right. Okay. So it hasn't been working. So when I have shared the screen in previous, it hasn't worked. Let me see if. Can you see that?
Yes.
Can you see what can you see? Can you see writing, or still the?
Follow in truth. I have to get close to read.
Right, but you can see the screen.
Yes, I see it. There's a white writing, white background with I see you scrolling up and down, right?
Yeah, so when I've tried to share it before, which I have done, obviously I haven't shared it properly, so it won't show on the video. Never mind. So yeah, I went there was a couple of times when I've gone off and shared my screen, and obviously it didn't work. Right, okay, here. So in Romans 3, Paul states, as it is written, and then he references 9 statements as it is written. So it's in Romans 3:10. As it is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. There is none that understandeth, there is none that seeketh after God. They are all gone out of the way, they are together become unprofitable. There is none that doeth good, no, not one. Their throat is an open sepulchre. With their tongues they have used deceit. The poison of asps is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their ways, and the way of peace have they not known. So here Paul quotes, as it is written. It is scripture. So there he states, as it is written, and then he goes off and states all of that as it is written. Now, the 9 statements are found throughout the Psalms and the book of Isaiah. There is not one place in the entire Old Testament where the 9 statements are written together. And if you're you can find this on my website, by the way. Verse 13 comes from Psalms 5:9 and Psalm 140. Verse 14 is Psalm 10:7. Verse 15 is Isaiah 59:7. Verse 16 is 59:7. Verse 17 is Isaiah 59:8. And verse 18 comes from Psalm 36:1. So all of these different verses that are stated here, these from verse 10 to 18, you can find all of these. And the first 3 verses are in Psalm 14 and Psalm 53. So it is evident that so what Paul has done is he's written all of this, what is written, but it's not written in one place. It's written in lots of different verses. He's just combined it all into one. But the translator of the Septuagint was unaware that the rest of the verses were combined, that they were contained elsewhere. As what they do is, if you have a look at Psalm 14:3 in the KJV, what the writer of the Septuagint did was added all of those words. And all of those words, what you'll find there, are found in Romans 3. Okay? Because what he did is he was unaware that the 6 statements were found elsewhere. The translator of the Septuagint has just inserted them all into Psalm 14, verse 3, all of it into that one verse.
Yeah, that kind of would lead you to think that they made the Septuagint after the New Testament.
Yeah. The Douay Rheims, the Catholic Bible, adds all of them. Now, I'll quote Jerome here as well, because I've written Jerome here in. He stated, "It would be tedious now to enumerate which great additions and omissions the Septuagint has made, and all the passages which in church copies are marked with daggers and asterisks, symbols indicating words present in the Greek but absent in the Hebrew, and vice versa." So he says that that the Septuagint has made great additions and omissions, and that was Jerome who stated that. That's not obviously not me. That's what I believe, but that's not me stating it. But Yeah, so I've got other examples of this, which I can show. That's just basically
Interesting.
one particular incident of why I believe that the LXX is a translation that happens after the New Testament has already been written, and in order to basically make the New Testament align better with the Old Testament, because it was believed, it
Right.
was understood, and that it didn't align, and that there were many mistakes in the New Testament. But it's understanding what the writers of the New Testament did incorrectly. It's understanding that they, in order to make to have a quote of the Old Testament, that it had to be verbatim, it had to be word for word.
Right.
And that's just not what the New Testament writers did. And they often would just, take, like I said, sections of here and take it from there and take it from, depending on what. I mean, we do that now when we're wanting to make a point, when we want to argue for a specific doctrine or belief. You go to different verses and you quote different verses, but you might not quote that verse exactly as it is, but you may paraphrase it in your own way of stating that particular verse and what it means. You might not quote the verse exactly as it is, but rather what it means. And that's what the New Testament writers did. They just took parts of the Old Testament. So yeah, that's just basically one of the reasons why I don't believe in a BC Septuagint. But I will go into more detail on when I do that particular video.
Just so you know, I shot you over my Facebook thing on the
Okay,
private chat. I couldn't
brilliant.
find yours. Maybe it's easier this way. I hope
Yeah,
that's mine. But
hopefully I'll be able to find that private chat. Yeah, there you go.
and
Yeah, so
anyways,
I'll find you there. Yeah, so I've been going for over 2 hours.
again, it was a
So
pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity.
I thank you very much for coming on. I you're the only one that was willing to come and
I wanted to
engage.
last time, but I had to go. I couldn't. I just couldn't. I didn't have the time really to do it, but I
Mm-hmm.
had the time now. But when you, but I didn't really want to get into what you were talking about because I just didn't study the history of it, and I don't have the knowledge of
Yeah,
what you were talking about. I
that's
mean,
fine.
it's interesting. I'm interested, but see, it's just something that doesn't drive me to go
Yeah,
and do all this research and
yeah,
searching. So
yeah.
everybody has their own
I
things.
have probably far too much time on my hands.
Well, that's good. There's always somebody that does the deep, dirty work for the benefit of others.
Yeah. All my work is free on my website, on my YouTube. I do have 2 books which I do plug basically every time that I do video. So I've written 2 books, but my work is free. It's all I do it for. I do it for me more than anything, because I want to know the truth. I'm searching for truth, so I do all of these studies for me, and then I decided that actually what I would do is I'll start doing writings and videos and stuff, and um, it may benefit somebody else. So if it benefits anybody, then awesome. Like I say, if people disagree with me, I'm okay with that. It doesn't bother me. I don't have an ego that requires everybody has to agree with me, even though I'm right. Um, you know, but I do like to at least correct incorrect arguments. That's what I I tend to do. That
Right.
seems to be what I do.
Fair enough.
And my studies come basically because somebody has made a claim or a statement to me, and I need to know whether that statement is true or not.
Right.
And that's where most of my studies come from.
The truth drives me as well, so that's what I'm interested in.
Ultimately, we are seeking truth, regardless of whether we think we've already got it or not. Nobody wants to believe something that is false, and they don't want to have a belief that they know is false, because if you have a belief that you know is false, that's quite strange. So everybody believes that what they believe is correct, or otherwise they wouldn't believe it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is correct.
Right. There's something that's inside a person that will cause them to divert from the path they're on to seek the truth, regardless of whether they think they have the truth. In other words, I may think I have the truth, but if I'm hearing different things, that to me should be a pause and say, well, what I believe is the truth compared to what they're believing. So I'm going to look into it instead of just saying, nope, this is what I've been told from cradle, and I know it's the truth, and what they say is not the truth. You can't really have that kind of attitude. If you're really truthful within yourself, you have to be able to just have an open mind and search it out. And I think that comes from being secure and confident within yourself, but it comes from it comes from putting your trust in God to lead you. So you, in admitting to yourself and to God that I don't want to be deceived. I want to know the truth. I want to be open to the truth, and wherever that path takes you, that's where I'm going.
That's the path that you're going to take. Yeah, is just you have to be convinced by, in your own studies, in your own, people do studies, and they people have argued against the position that I hold on many different things, and if they're convinced on that, then that's for them. All I can do is put forward my position and my case, and whether if somebody wants to believe that, that's okay, and if you want to reject that, if you don't believe what I've stated, then that's fine. I'm just trying to put forward facts, and that's and you make up your own mind from there. Okay, right. Well, thank you very much for coming on.
Well, thank you for the opportunity and the time, and I appreciate it. God bless you. You have a good sleep and
hopefully I'll see you on another video. And
yes, hopefully.
You're always welcome to come on at the end and discuss if you have time.
Yes. Well, thank you. Okay. Take care. God bless.
God bless. Bye. Okay, so thank you very much. Obviously the conversation wasn't solely focused on what I actually presented, but again, if anybody would like to come on to my channel at any time and discuss what I present on any of my videos, and you would like to come on and discuss that, and whether you agree with me or disagree with me, I have no problem with discussing it. So if at any point anybody wants to come on, please feel free to contact me, and we can make an arrangement, or you can come on at any time when I make one of the videos that I'm going to be making, especially in this new series that I'm going to be doing, looking into the false claims of the KJV, and obviously the Greek Septuagint, and how it was originated and formulated, and textual criticism as a whole. And 1 John 5:7 is definitely one of those verses that I will be presenting the argument for, why I believe that it is a brilliant Unitarian verse, and why I don't believe that it teaches the Trinity at all, but also why I believe that it is actually Scripture. But as I said earlier, 1 John 5:7 is the verse in the Bible that if somebody didn't or doesn't believe it, it is a difficult passage, because it's basically 1 John 5:7 and 1 John 5:8. So it's not really just one verse. It's two verses. Were the KJV translators Trinitarian? Most of them were, yes, they were, but they were also from different backgrounds as well. So some of them were Calvinists. There were different theology within. They were the vast majority were Trinitarian, and I would agree with that. But they did have different theologies, so they weren't all coming from the same specific beliefs. Although a lot of them would have had similar beliefs, they were Trinitarian. Yeah. But that, to me, I can see why. Obviously, the point would be made is that 1 John 5:7 is traditionally seen as a Trinitarian verse, as asserting the Trinity. But because I don't believe that it does assert the Trinity, I don't think that so even if they included it because they believed that it taught the Trinity, it wouldn't actually argue against whether it's authoritative or not. If they included it because they thought that it was a Trinitarian verse and they wanted to assert the Trinity, if the verse belongs, it wouldn't make any difference if that was the reason why they inserted it. So it comes down to whether the verse belongs or not, and that's the point. And I do believe that there is evidence that points to the verse being. Maybe actually 1 John 5:7 would be a really good verse to start with. I was going to start with the formation of the Septuagint, but I think I might either do 1 John 5:7, because that's the hardest of all of the verses, all of the variants. I think that 1 John 5:7 is the hardest to prove that it belongs. The rest of them, I think, that there's good evidence for why the King James Version reading is correct. 1 John 5:7 is one of the more difficult ones, because the evidence for 1 John 5:7 is on the weight. It's weighted, I would say, towards the fact that it isn't original. But the evidence that it is original is a lot more than what is asserted. There is a lot of evidence for the inclusion of 1 John 5:7. And the arguments against Erasmus most of them are absolutely 100% false. Him being, this Catholic priest humanist. He was Catholic. He was actually, if you go into the history, he was actually denounced by the Catholic Church because of, and they didn't accept the TR. So and a humanist has got a totally different meaning today is what it had back then. It basically meant back then that it was to do with believing in or reading the classics, the modern works. Is a different meaning. Yeah, so I think that the evidence for 1 John 5:7 is a lot more than what people would would think that it was. So I might do that one on my next on the next video. And I have just rambled on for probably over an hour now, really, in the conversation. And now, so I'm going to call it a night. It's 20 past or 25 past 12 here in the morning. So I think I'll call that quits. Thank you very much for watching and listening to me ramble. And hopefully I will see you on another video. And it could very well be 1 John 5:7. And I'll probably be aiming for Saturday or Sunday. But again, thank you very much for watching. If you're watching this live or if you watch it in the future, I do appreciate everybody that takes time to listen to what I've got to say. I know that quite often I just ramble on, but yeah, I'm getting better with doing these videos. I think. But yeah, thank you very much, and I shall call that a day.